The sky above Halon 7 was always gray, not because of clouds, but because of the massive ships that hung in the air like sleeping giants. These ships belonged to the Dominion, and they had been there for 30 years. Walked through the narrow streets of Sector 12, carrying a bag over her shoulder. The bag was heavy and it smelled bad. Other humans moved out of her way. Some of them laughed quietly, others just shook their heads. "There goes the garbage woman," an old man whispered to his wife. "Such a waste. She was smart once." Heard him but did not stop. She had learned long ago that words could not hurt her. Only actions mattered, only patience. They had come to human space when was just a child. She remembered the day the sky turned dark with their ships. She remembered the screaming and the fire. Most of all, she remembered her mother pushing her into a hiding hole and saying, "Stay quiet, stay alive." Her mother never came back for her. Now was 28 years old. She worked in the waste processing center, the lowest job a human could have. Every day she sorted through the garbage that they threw away, medical waste, food scraps, broken machines, things that no one wanted. But wanted them, she wanted them very much. Her small room in the human quarters was filled with strange objects, pieces of metal, broken circuits, and bones, so many bones. "You need to stop this," her brother said one evening. He stood in her doorway, his arms crossed over his chest. He was 2 years older than her and worked in the shipyards. His hands were rough and from hard labor. "People are talking. They are noticing." Did not look up from her work. She was using a small tool to scrape at a long, curved piece of something white. It looked like bone, but it was harder than any bone had ever seen. "Let them talk," she said. "This is not a game." Stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. "Asked about you today." He asked why the garbage woman keeps taking things home. At the mention of that name, his hand stopped moving. Was the overseer of Sector 12. He was cruel even by standards. He enjoyed hurting humans. He enjoyed it very much. "What did you tell him?" asked. "I told him you were simple in the head, that you liked to collect pretty things like a child." Sat down on the edge of her bed. He laughed, but he will not laugh forever. If he thinks you are hiding something valuable, he will come for you. Finally looked at her brother. Her eyes were calm and dark like deep water. "I am not hiding anything valuable. I am making something valuable. There is a difference." Looked at the white object in her hands. "What is that?" "A tool." "What kind of tool?" Smiled, but there was no happiness in it. "A useless one. That is what they will think." Before could ask more questions, a loud bell rang outside. It was the gathering bell. All humans had to come to the central square when that bell rang. It usually meant punishment for someone, or entertainment for the. The square was already full when it arrived. Hundreds of humans stood in silent rows while soldiers watched from raised platforms. The soldiers were tall, almost 3 meters high. Their skin was gray and thick, like stone. Their faces had no noses, only 2 small holes. Their eyes were yellow and cold. But the most striking thing about them was their bones. Their bones grew outside their bodies in some places, forming natural armor on their shoulders, arms, and backs. The bones were white and sharp, and they marked them as the warrior race they believed themselves to be. Stood at the center of the square on a raised stage. He was larger than most, and the bone armor on his body was carved with symbols of his rank. In his hand, he held something that made his heart stop. Her bag, her collection bag. "I have discovered something amusing today," announced. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "We have an artist living among the cattle." The soldiers laughed. The human stayed silent. Reached into the bag and pulled out various objects, broken pieces of metal, strange bits of circuitry, and finally the curved white object that had been working on. "Look at this," said, holding it up. "The garbage woman thinks she can make beautiful things." He turned to face the crowd of humans. "Which one of you is the artist? stepped forward. Did not move, grabbed her arm, trying to hold her back, but she gently removed his hand and walked to the front of the crowd. "It is mine," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. Looked down at her. He was so much bigger that she had to bend her neck back to see his face. A smile spread across his lipless mouth. "The famous garbage woman herself. Tell me, what is this supposed to be?" He waved the white object in front of her face. "A knife," said, "a decorative knife." "A knife?" laughed again. The other joined him. "It is not even sharp. It is the most useless knife I have ever seen." He threw it at her feet. "Pick it up. Show everyone your great art." Bent down and picked up the object. She held it carefully like it was precious. Around her she could hear humans whispering. She knew what they were saying. They were saying she was foolish. They were saying she was crazy. "Good, let them think that." "From now on," announced, "this human will bring her treasures to show us every week. We could all use more entertainment." He waved his hand in dismissal. "Go back to your holes, cattle. The show is over." As the crowd broke apart, an old man named caught eye. He had been a scientist once before the came. Now he worked as a cleaner in their medical facilities. He looked at the object in her hands and his eyes went wide. Later that night, he came to her room. "That is not regular bone," he whispered. "Where did you get bone?" Looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned close and spoke softly in his ear. "Have you heard? The great Warlord is dead. They say he was cremated with full honors." She paused. "They are lying." His face went pale, but in his eyes something new appeared, something that had been dead for 30 years. Hope, the waste processing center, was deep underground. It was dark there and hot, and the air smelled like death. This was where they sent everything they did not want. Broken machines, spoiled food, bodies. Had worked there for 6 years. At first she had hated it. The smell made her sick. The sights gave her nightmares. But slowly she began to see the truth that others missed. They threw away more than garbage. They threw away secrets. She learned to read their medical reports, written in a language humans were forbidden to study. She learned to identify their technology by touch. And she learned something very important about biology. Their bones were not just bones. They were computers. They stored information. They sent signals. And for the highest ranking, their bones were keys that opened every door in the Dominion. Remembered the day she found his body. It was late at night 2 years ago. A transport had arrived with a special delivery from the capital ship. The containers were marked with the highest security level. No humans were supposed to open them, but the soldiers who brought them were lazy. They dumped the containers and left. Waited until she was alone. Then she opened the first container. Inside was a body, but not just any. This one was massive, bigger than any she had ever seen. His bone armor covered almost his entire body, and it was carved with symbols she recognized from her forbidden studies. These were the marks of a supreme warlord. The Eternal, the conqueror of Earth's colonies, the butcher of New Soul, the monster who had killed millions of humans and laughed while doing it. Someone had cut his throat. For a long moment just stared. Then she understood. Had been murdered by his own people. They had hidden his body in the garbage because they were afraid. If others learned that such a powerful warlord could be killed by his own soldiers, there would be chaos. So they threw him away like trash, and trash in Sector 12 belonged to. That night she began her work. Using tools she had secretly made from stolen parts, she carefully removed spinal column. The spine of a was their most important bone. It connected to their brain and stored all their access codes. For a supreme warlord, that spine was the master key to the entire Dominion. For 2 years she had worked on that spine, slowly, carefully, shaping it into something that looked simple and useless, a dull blade, a decorative toy, something that would make them laugh. Now standing in her room she finally told someone the truth. The old man sat down heavily, his hands were shaking. Do you know what you have done if they find out? They will not find out, said, because they cannot imagine it. To them we are animals. Animals do not build weapons. Animals do not plan. Animals do not wait. She held up the bone blade. It was almost finished now. In the dim light it seemed to glow with a pale inner light. This is not just a knife. This is the key to every lock in their empire, every door, every weapon, every ship. His eyes went wide. How do you know it will work? I tested it, small tests. Last month I brought it near a security panel. The panel turned off. The guards thought it was a malfunction, smiled. It was not a malfunction, it was Ghost obeying my command. Before could respond, there was a knock at the door. Quickly hid the blade under her mattress and opened the door. It was her childhood friend, worked as a servant in the household of an administrator. She was thin and tired-looking, but her eyes were sharp. She pushed past and closed the door behind her. We need to talk, said. I heard something tonight, something bad. What is it? Looked at uncertain, but nodded, and she continued. They are planning something called the Culling Festival. In 3 days they will kill 40% of the human population. They say we eat too much food. They say we take up too much space. Her voice broke. They are going to hunt us for sport. The room was silent, put his face in his hands, but did not react. She simply nodded as if she had expected this. I know, she said. You know, stared at her. How can you be so calm? They are going to murder thousands of us. Yes, and I'm going to stop them. With what? Your garbage collection. His voice was angry now. I have heard the stories. Everyone thinks you are crazy. Even your own brother thinks you have lost your mind. My brother thinks many things, said calmly, but my brother does not see what I see. None of you do. There was another knock at the door. This time it was, and he was not alone. Behind him stood a man named, had been a soldier before the conquest. Now he led a small group of humans who called themselves the Resistance. We heard about the Culling Festival, said as he entered. We are planning an attack. We need every person who can fight. What kind of attack? Asked. We will steal weapons from a supply depot. Then we will strike at the command center during the festival. We will probably die, but we will take some of them with us. That is not a plan. That is suicide. His face hardened. Then what do you suggest? Should we just wait to be killed? Reached under her mattress and pulled out the blade. She held it up for everyone to see. In the small room it looked even less impressive than before. Just a curved piece of white material with a simple handle. No sharp edge. No fancy design. Laughed. This is your great weapon, a dull knife made of garbage. It is not garbage, said. It is the spine of the eternal. The laughter stopped. That is impossible, said, but his voice was uncertain now. Was cremated. That is what they want everyone to believe, but I processed his body myself. I cut out his spine with my own hands, and for 2 years I have been turning it into a key. Looked at each person in the room. In 3 days I will use this key to open every door in the capital. I will shut down every weapon. I will turn their own security systems against them. How? Demanded. Bones contain their identity codes. A warlord's spine contains the master codes for everything. When I activate this blade, every system in the city will think that himself is giving orders. Eyes were cold and steady, and will order them to kneel. The room was silent for a long moment, then spoke. It might work, he said slowly. I studied biology before the conquest. What she says about the bones is true. Looked at the blade again. This time he did not laugh. What do you need from us? I need your fighters in position throughout the city. When the systems fail, the armory doors will open. Your people need to be ready to take the weapons. Paused. And I need someone to get me into the arena on the first day of the festival. The arena, that is where they will do the killing. Yes, looked at the blade in her hands. That is where I will do mine. The night before the Culling Festival, the human quarters were quiet. No one slept. Mothers held their children close. Old men prayed to gods they had forgotten. Young people sat in corners, trying to find courage they were not sure they had. Sat alone in her room. The blade lay on the table in front of her. She had finished her work just hours ago. The last piece of circuitry was in place. The final connection was made. Now she could only wait. She thought about her mother. She thought about the day that came. She had been 12 years old, a student at the academy in New Seoul. Her teachers said she was gifted. They said she would do great things one day. Then the sky turned dark. They did not ask for surrender. They did not negotiate. They simply destroyed. City after city fell. Millions died in the first week. By the end of the first month, humanity was broken. Those who survived became slaves. Remembered hiding in the dark while soldiers walked above her. She remembered the sound of her mother's screams. She remembered the silence that came after. For years she had lived like an animal, eating scraps, avoiding attention, trying not to die, but she never stopped watching. She never stopped learning. And she never ever forgot what they had taken from her. When she got the job at the waste processing center, she saw her chance. They were careless with their garbage. They believed humans were too stupid to understand anything important. They were wrong. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. It was. "I cannot let you do this," he said. His voice was thick with emotion. "I cannot watch my sister die." "I will not die." "You do not know that." He stepped closer and grabbed her shoulders. "Please, there must be another way. We can run, we can hide, we can." "We can nothing," gently removed his hands. "There is nowhere to run. There is nowhere to hide. They are everywhere. They will always be everywhere unless someone stops them." "Why must it be you?" Picked up the blade and looked at it. Such a simple thing. Such a useless-looking thing. But inside it, the power of a dead god waited to be released. "Because I am the one who found him," she said. "Because I am the one who spent 2 years learning his secrets. Because I am the only one who can make this work." She looked at her brother. "And because I want to watch them fall. I want to see the fear in their eyes when they realize what I have done. I want them to know that a garbage woman, a piece of human trash, destroyed everything they built." Stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Then I will be there with you, in the arena." "No, I need you outside. When the systems fail, someone needs to lead the people to the armory. Someone needs to organize the fight." Touched his face gently. "You are stronger than me, brother. You always were. When the doors open, make sure our people are ready." Before could argue, another visitor arrived. It was, and he looked troubled. "We have a problem," he said. "Is coming. He is doing final inspections of the human quarters. He is looking for weapons." Felt her heart beat faster. If found the blade now, if he examined it closely enough to see what it really was. "Hide everything," she said. "I will deal with." She walked out into the street just as and his soldiers turned the corner. The overseer was in a good mood. Tomorrow was the culling festival, and he would have the honor of making the first kill. He was already imagining the blood on his hands. "Garbage woman," he called out when he saw. "I was hopping to see you. Do you have any new art to show me?" Bowed her head. "Yes, master, I finished my knife." "Your knife?" Laughed. "That dull piece of bone, let me see it." His hands did not shake as she reached into her coat and pulled out the blade. She held it out too. Everything depended on the next few seconds. Took the blade and examined it. He turned it over in his large hands. He pressed his thumb against the edge and laughed when it did not cut him. "Pathetic," he said. "You spent all this time on something that cannot even cut bread." He held it up for his soldiers to see. "Look at human craftsmanship. No wonder they lost the war." The soldiers laughed, kept her head down, but inside she was smiling, because she saw what did not see. When he touched the blade, a small light on a nearby security panel flickered, just for a moment, just enough to tell her that the blade was working. It recognized his touch. It was ready to give orders. All it needed was the activation command. Threw the blade at her feet. Keep your toy, garbage woman. Bring it to the arena tomorrow. I want everyone to see it before you die." "I will," Master said. "I would not miss it." After Left appeared from the shadows. His face was pale but excited. "I saw the panel flicker," he whispered. "It works, it really works." Yes, picked up the blade and held it close. "Tomorrow, this useless knife will bring down an empire." "What is the activation command? How do you turn it on?" Had spent months figuring out that question. She had studied every piece of data she could steal about command protocols. She had learned their ancient language. She had discovered the words that only a supreme warlord could speak. "The command is simple," she said. "In their old tongue, I just need to say 3 words. Commands, kneel." The blade will broadcast the signal. Every system in range will think himself is giving the order. What happens then? Then chaos. Looked up at the gray sky, at the massive ships that hung there like threats. Security systems will shut down. Weapons will lock. Doors will open. For a few minutes, maybe an hour, they will be helpless. And after that hour, we need to win the fight ourselves. Eyes were cold. The blade will give us a chance, just one chance. We cannot waste it. Nodded. Then he asked the question that had been in his mind all night. "Why did you never tell anyone? For 2 years you worked alone. You let everyone think you were crazy. You let them laugh at you. Why?" Was quiet for a moment, then she answered. "Because hope is dangerous. If I had told people, they would have expected too much. They would have gotten excited. They would have made mistakes. They would have noticed." She shook her head. "It was safer to be the crazy garbage woman. It was safer to be alone." "You are not alone anymore." "No," looked at the blade one last time. "Tomorrow, no human on this planet will be alone anymore. Tomorrow we rise together, or we die together." She went inside to prepare for the morning. The longest night of her life was almost over, and the longest day was about to begin. The arena was massive. It had been built by human slaves in the first year of the occupation. Thousands had died constructing it. Now it stood at the center of the capital, a monument to power and human suffering. On the morning of the culling festival, 10,000 filled the seats. They wore their finest armor. They carried their sharpest weapons. They had come to watch humans die for their entertainment. The first group of humans was brought in through the main gates. There were 50 of them, men, women, and children. They had been selected randomly from the population. Their crime was simply being alive. Was among them. She walked with her head down, her hands tied in front of her. The blade was hidden inside her coat, pressed against her stomach. The guards had searched her, but they had not found it. They were looking for metal weapons. They were not looking for bones. Around her, people were crying. A mother held her young son close and whispered prayers. An old man walked with his eyes closed, accepting his fate. A teenage girl screamed and fought against the guards until they hit her and she fell silent. Felt nothing. She had prepared for this moment for 2 years. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. The arena floor was covered with sand. It was easier to clean blood from sand. They had thought of everything. They had made killing into an art form. Stood on a raised platform at the center of the arena. He wore ceremonial armor decorated with the bones of humans he had killed. His eyes swept across the crowd of victims, and when they found, he smiled. "Welcome to the culling festival," he announced, his voice booming through speakers. "Today we celebrate the natural order. The strong kill, the weak die. This is the way of the universe." The audience cheered. They stamped their feet and pounded their weapons against their armor. The sound was like thunder. "I have decided to honor tradition," continued. "I will make the first kill myself, and I have chosen a very special victim." He pointed directly at, "Bring the garbage woman to me." Guards grabbed and dragged her to the center of the arena. They threw her down on the sand in front of his platform. Slowly, she got to her feet. Jumped down from the platform and walked toward her. He was so tall that she barely reached his chest. His bone armor clicked and rattled as he moved. In his hand, he carried a ceremonial blade, long and curved and very, very sharp. "I remember you," he said quietly so only she could hear. "You and your garbage, you and your useless art." He raised his blade. "Any last words?" Looked up at him. Around her, 10,000 watched in hungry silence. Above her, the gray sky pressed down like a weight. Inside her coat, the bone blade waited. "Yes," she said, "I have some last words." She reached into her coat and pulled out the blade. It caught the light and seemed to glow from within, pale and cold like dead starlight. Laughed, "Your toy. You want to fight me with that dull piece of—" He stopped. His eyes had finally seen what his mind had refused to understand. The markings on the blade, the color of the bone, the shape of the curve. He recognized it. Every in the galaxy would recognize it. "No," he whispered, "that is not possible." Raised the blade above her head. She took a deep breath, and in the ancient language in words that only a supreme warlord could speak, she gave her command. "Commands, kneel." The blade pulsed with light. A wave of energy spread out from it, invisible but powerful. It touched every piece of technology in the arena. Then it kept spreading, moving through the city like ripples in water. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. The massive screens around the arena went dark. The security drones that hovered over the crowd fell from the sky. The weapons in the guards' hands made a clicking sound and went silent. The energy barriers around the arena flickered and died. And through the speakers, a voice spoke. It was a recording, pulled from the deepest archives of history. The voice of himself, speaking the words he had recorded decades ago. "All forces, stand down. Emergency protocol activated. Await further orders." Looked at his weapon. It would not fire. He looked at the guards. Their weapons would not fire either. He looked at the security systems. They were all offline. Then he looked at, and for the first time in his life he felt fear. "What have you done?" he screamed. "I gave you back your warlord," said. Her voice was calm and cold. "Or at least I gave you his spine. The same spine that controlled your entire empire. The same spine that you threw away like garbage." Across the city, doors were opening. Armory doors. Prison doors. Gates that had been locked for 30 years. The blade was broadcasting codes to every system within range, and those systems were obeying. In the arena, the human prisoners looked around in confusion. The guards who had been pointing weapons at them were now staring at their useless guns. The in the audience were standing up, shouting, trying to understand what was happening. His voice came over a stolen communicator. "The armories are open. We have weapons. All fighters move now." And then the screaming started. Not human screaming, screaming. Because suddenly, for the first time in 30 years, the humans were fighting back, and they could not stop them. Roared with rage. He threw aside his useless energy weapon and grabbed a physical blade from his belt. He was still bigger than, he was still stronger. Technology or not, he would kill her with his bare hands. He charged at her. The blade swung down with enough force to cut through stone. But was not there. She had stepped to the side, moving with a speed that surprised even her. 2 years of patience, 2 years of planning, 2 years of waiting for this exact moment. She was ready. His blade hit the sand. Before he could raise it again, appeared from nowhere and slammed into him from the side. Her brother had jumped down from the stands the moment the security systems failed. "Go," shouted. "Get to the broadcast tower, I will hold him." Hesitated for only a second, then she ran. Behind her she could hear and fighting. Around her the arena had become a battlefield. Humans were picking up fallen weapons, were trying to fight with swords and fists. Blood was soaking into the sand. But it was not just human blood anymore. Ran toward the broadcast tower on the edge of the arena. If she could reach it, she could transmit the signal across the entire planet. Every human settlement, every outpost, everyone would hear his command. She was halfway there when a soldier blocked her path. He had a physical blade, and he knew how to use it. "Human filth," he growled, "you will pay for this." Looked at the bone blade in her hand. It was not sharp. It was not designed for fighting. It was a key, not a weapon. But she had spent 2 years making it. She knew every curve, every edge, every weak point. And she knew something else too. Bone was the strongest material in the galaxy, and this was the bone of the eternal. She raised the blade and met the soldier's attack. The blades connected with a sound like breaking ice. The soldier's weapon shattered. The bone blade did not even chip. Did not give him time to recover. She struck again, driving the blade into the gap between his armor plates. It was not sharp enough to cut, but it was hard enough to break. She felt his ribs crack under the impact. The soldier fell, kept running. Was waiting at the broadcast tower. Her friend had used the chaos to slip away from her masters. Now she stood at the control panel, ready to help. "The system is unlocked," said. "The signal is ready, just give the command." Raise the blade one more time. She spoke the words again, and this time the entire planet heard them. "Commands kneel." The signal went out to every corner of Halon 7, and everywhere it reached, systems died. Weapons fell silent, doors opened, and humans who had been slaves for 30 years suddenly found themselves with a choice. They could kneel, or they could fight. They chose to fight. The battle for Halon 7 lasted 3 days. Without their technology, they were still dangerous. They were bigger than humans. They were stronger. Their bone armor protected them from many attacks, but they were no longer invincible. For the first time in 30 years, they could bleed and die like everyone else. And humans had been waiting a long time to make them bleed. By the end of the first day, the capital city was in human hands, and his resistance fighters had taken the armories, the power stations, and the communication centers. Soldiers who tried to fight were killed. Those who surrendered were locked in the same cages that had once held human prisoners. Did not rest. After the broadcast, she joined the fighting in the streets. The bone blade was not a good weapon, but it had become a symbol. Wherever humans saw it, they fought harder. Wherever saw it, they felt fear. On the second day, humans from across the planet began to arrive. Farmers who had been working in the fields, miners who had been digging in the mountains, factory workers who had been building ships. They came with stolen weapons, with farming tools, with rocks and pipes and bare hands. They came because they had heard the signal. They came because, for the first time, they believed they could win. Survived his fight with, but just barely. The overseer had broken his arm and cracked 3 of his ribs before a group of freed prisoners pulled him away. Now lay in a medical tent, his wounds being treated by human doctors who had been slaves just days before. "You were supposed to stay out of the arena," said when she visited him. "I was supposed to do many things," smiled weakly, "but I could not let my little sister fight alone." "I was not alone, I had with me." Laughed, then winced from the pain. "A dead tyrant's spine, only you would think of such a thing." On the third day, the last stronghold fell. It was a military base on the northern continent, where a commander named had gathered the surviving soldiers. He had been trying to restore their weapon systems, but codes were still active. Every time the fix something, the bone blade shut it down again. Led the final assault herself. She walked through the gates of the base with 1,000 human fighters behind her. The soldiers watched from the walls, their useless weapons in their hands. "You have lost," called out. "Your warlord is dead, your technology is dead, your empire on this world is dead. Surrender now and you will live. Fight and you will die with everything else." Came forward. He was old for his bone armor cracked and from decades of war. He looked at with something that might have been respect. "Who are you?" he asked. "What is your name?" "My name is, I was a waste processor, a garbage collector, the lowest of the low." She held up the bone blade. "Now I am the one who freed my people. With our own warlord's bones," shook his head slowly. "We threw him away like trash, and you turned him into a weapon against us. You threw away many things. You threw away people too. You thought we were worthless." His voice was cold but steady. "You were wrong." For a long moment was silent. Then he made his decision. "I surrender," he said. "We all surrender." He dropped his weapon. Behind him, one by one, the other soldiers did the same. The war for Halon 7 was over. The humans had won. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The prisoners were put to work repairing the damage they had caused. Human governments were formed. Schools reopened. Hospitals began treating wounds that had been ignored for 30 years. And everyone talked about. Some called her a hero, some called her a genius, some called her the mother of liberation, but did not care about names. She cared about results. One evening she stood on the roof of the broadcast tower looking out at the city. The gray sky was still there. The ships still hung in the air. But now those ships belonged to humanity, and his pilots were learning to fly them. Soon they would be able to defend themselves against any attack. Found her there, watching the sunset. "I have finished writing the history," he said. He held up a small device that contained all his records. "I told the story of how a garbage collector brought down an empire." "Is it a good story?" "It is the best story I have ever written," stood beside her. "But I have one question. Why did you keep the blade? It has done its work. The codes will stop working eventually. Why not throw it away?" Reached into her coat and pulled out the bone blade. It looked the same as always, pale, simple, useless looking. But now everyone knew what it really was. "Because it reminds me," she said. "Reminds you of what?" "That power comes from unexpected places, that the things people throw away are often the most valuable." She turned the blade over in her hands. "And that patience is the deadliest weapon of all." From below they could hear the sounds of celebration. Music was playing. People were singing. For the first time in 30 years, humans on Halon 7 were happy. "What will you do now?" asked. "You could lead us. You could be president or queen or whatever you want." Smiled and shook her head. "I do not want to lead. I am not a leader. I am a builder, a planner, a collector of useful garbage." She looked up at the ships in the sky. "And I think there is more work to do." "More work?" "Other planets, other colonies, billions of humans still living as slaves across the galaxy." Eyes were distant, already seeing the future. "They control 100 worlds. They have 100 warlords, and warlords die. They get thrown away like garbage." She smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. "I wonder what their bones might be useful for." Felt a chill run down his spine. "You cannot free the entire galaxy." "Maybe not, but I can teach others how." Put the blade back in her coat. "I can show them that their masters are not gods. I can show them that every empire has weaknesses. I can show them that even the smallest person doing the smallest job can change everything." She turned to go back inside. At the door she paused and looked back at. "Write that in your history," she said. "Write that the garbage woman is not finished yet. Write that they should be afraid, not of armies, not of weapons, but of the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who wait and watch and learn." Her voice was soft but full of steel. "Write that humanity is coming for them all." She walked inside, leaving alone on the roof. He looked down at his device, at the words he had written, at the story of one woman who had turned an empire's arrogance into its destruction. Then he began a new chapter. On other worlds, he wrote, other humans began to watch their garbage more carefully. They began to save things that their masters threw away. They began to whisper about a woman named and a blade made of bone. They began to hope. And though, for the first time in their history, began to fear.